It's been almost a month since I self-published my first book, and I think people massively underestimate how emotionally weird self-publishing actually is when you're doing it with a very small audience online. Because the internet makes it seem like you upload your book, you post a cute little launch video, and suddenly your life changes overnight. And sometimes that does happen. But for most small creators, including myself, most indie authors, that is not the reality. So I want to sit down and talk honestly about what this past month has actually looked like for me. Hi, everyone. My name is Jordan, and I wrote All Parts of Me. It is my first ever novel. You can check it out on Amazon as well as my website. But I decided to go through self-publishing because I really wanted to have control over everything. And I did the research. There's a lot of trade-offs for one or the other. But the biggest thing that I've kind of learned with self-publishing is that it is not for the faint of heart. And again, I knew that going into it. I was actually pretty grounded when I launched my book because I knew I was learning in real time. I wasn't going to be an expert. I knew I probably wasn't going to get everything right the first time. And honestly, I probably still won't get everything right this second time either. But one of the first things I learned was that if you publish an ebook through Amazon, but here's a lesson for you if you're thinking about self-publishing, is that if you publish an ebook through Amazon, your book can take up to 72 hours to actually be approved and distributed, which I did not realize. So if you are planning on having, let's say, a launch on May 20th, for instance, so next Wednesday, then what that means is that your book needs to be uploaded to Amazon probably by tomorrow, the 15th or 16th. That way you have 72 hours to basically work on all the other things while you're waiting for Amazon to approve your book. So technically for myself, my launch date was April 22nd, but my book did not actually become available until the 24th. And I didn't even realize that until the 25th, which was a little horrifying, I'm not going to lie, because I had already posted that launch content. And I wanted to talk about this so that if you are thinking about self-publishing, you kind of know this. I had already told people that the book was available, and meanwhile, Amazon was basically just holding my book hostage somewhere in the void. Thankfully, it didn't completely ruin my launch plan, but it did mean I had to kind of do this double back and remarket the launch once the book was finally live, which put a little bit more burden on my brain and put a little bit more burden on honestly my mental health because I had put so many stakes, even though I knew this book wasn't going to go most likely, you still can't help the little dream, the little maybe. And so honestly, that kind of just sums up a lot of what the self-publishing experience has been for me. You are constantly learning in public. Now, another part of self-publishing that I think deserves a real conversation is in fact this subject around AI. And I'm kind of moving a little fast through this because I just think that these are kind of the main lessons that other indie authors should know when it comes to self-publishing for the first time. Or maybe you have self-published and something went wrong and you're not sure why. Maybe it's one of these things. So our first lesson was posting on Amazon. I believe Barnes and Noble and a couple others also have about a 48 to 72 hour period. So basically just learning that if you want to have a launch on, like I said, May 20th, your book needs to be uploaded and ready to go by May 15th. Just gives you kind of an idea of a timeline. But now moving on to this conversation about AI, this is a super sensitive topic, especially among creatives, for myself included. And the truth is, I consider myself a creative. I care deeply about artists. I want to support artists. I want to pay artists. But I also need to be honest about where I was financially when I made this book, and arguably still where I am financially. I'm still moving through that. When I started writing it, I wasn't ever planning on publishing a novel. I was writing from a place of healing. It started as something deeply personal. And at the same time, I was also losing my job in an economy that honestly felt like it was collapsing in real time. I did not have hundreds or even thousands of dollars to spend on custom cover art. So yes, I did have to use AI as a tool to help create my cover after trying to make it myself through Canva and Procreate and realizing I was completely out of my depth creatively. And to prove that, here are some of the original versions that I tried designing myself before I finally admitted defeat. I probably spent 3 to 4 weeks. I spent like, I think $50 on this tutorial class on how to fully use Procreate to like really create the vision that I had originally had for this cover art. Eventually, it just wasn't working out. And do I love that I had to rely on AI? No. I'm not someone who wants to replace artists or avoid supporting creatives. In fact, for future books, I would genuinely love to hire a Black or Latino artist to create my covers and pay them fairly for their work. But the reality is that sometimes when you are building something from absolutely nothing, you make the best decisions you can with the resources that you have. And honestly, I used AI as a stepping stone, not as the dream. All right, switching gears, let's talk about the actual marketing side of self-publishing. And I'll be completely honest, I'm not even going to sit here and pretend I have all the answers because I am still figuring this out in real time. But one thing I have learned is this. If you are going to self-publish your book, you have to be willing to market the hell out of it. And not in this glamorous way. I do not mean running massive ad campaigns or suddenly becoming some business mastermind overnight. No, I mean you need to get comfortable talking about your work to the point where it feels almost cringe. I bring up my book constantly now. It gets mentioned in podcast episodes, in almost every TikTok I make, in Instagram captions, in random conversations I'm having with people on the streets. Because when you are a small creator, you are not automatically getting placed in front of thousands of people. You are fighting to get your work out in front of 100 people, 200 people, maybe 300 if a video does well. And the reality is sometimes you are going to work incredibly hard on something and still not have it sell as much as you had hoped. That part can be really discouraging. And it sucks to put in all this time and effort and energy and just to see something flop. Because of course, we all dream about writing the next massive best-selling novel. We all imagine our book becoming the thing people cannot stop talking about. But do you know how many copies you generally have to sell in 1 week to hit the New York Times bestseller list? I didn't know this until recently. Usually around 5,000 copies minimum in 1 week have to be sold. And a lot of these sales often cannot just come from Amazon alone. They have to come from independent bookstores, Barnes & Noble, other large retailers. And many of those opportunities are far easier to access through traditional publishing. So no, my tiny self-published romance novel is probably not ending up on the New York Times bestseller list tomorrow. But honestly, I still hold that dream for myself one day. And I think that's the weird thing about chasing dreams as an adult, is that you have to learn how to hold both reality and hope at the same time. Because the reality of building something online with a smaller audience is that sometimes it feels like you are just screaming into a black hole. You post, you market, you create, you hope, you rinse, you repeat, and sometimes it feels like nobody is listening. I have absolutely had moments over the past month where I felt discouraged, where I questioned whether I should even keep pushing myself this creatively because I don't have a huge following. And sometimes I genuinely wonder if growing a massive following is even the goal for me anymore. But what I do know is that I want to tell stories. I want to write about women finding hope again, finding love again, finding possibility after life has tried to convince them to give up on themselves. That is the kind of work that I want to keep creating. And honestly, even if only a small amount of people read this book, right now, it still exists, still wrote it, I still published it, I still did the thing that I dreamed about doing for years. So yes, the reality of self-publishing with a small audience is that it is hard. It's uncomfortable, it's vulnerable, it's emotionally exhausting at times, but I don't think that means that we stop trying. I don't think it means we give up on ourselves either. We have to keep rinsing and repeating. We keep creating, we keep hoping, we keep dreaming, because that's what creatives do. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you are also out there trying to build something from nothing right now, I hope this reminded you that you are not alone. Kisses.